Daniel Harper stood near the window of his ship, looking at the huge space station ahead. The station was called the Galactic Assembly, and it was where all the important alien races met to talk about the galaxy. Daniel had been to this place many times before, but today felt different. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones. His helper, Lisa Monroe, was checking her papers one more time. She looked nervous. "Remember, Daniel," she said quietly, "we don't talk unless someone asks us a question. We don't vote on big things. We just watch, learn, and try to stay alive." Daniel nodded, but didn't like it. For 300 years, humans had played it safe. When the aliens found Earth, they discovered that humans were weak compared to everyone else. Humans had no special powers. They couldn't read minds. They couldn't survive in space without suits. They couldn't even live on most planets without machines to help them breathe. The galaxy was full of scary aliens. The Vraxan were huge warriors who could breathe fire and controlled 400 star systems. The Keltharians were a hive mind that could control millions of bodies at the same time. The Zephrons could control gravity so well they could crush entire planets if they wanted to. And humans? Humans were just good at fixing things and never giving up. It wasn't much, but it kept them alive so far. As Daniel's ship docked with the station, he wondered why this meeting had been called so suddenly. Usually, the aliens talked a lot before big meetings, but this time everyone had been quiet. That scared him more than anything else. A strange alien with many eyes led them through the crystal hallways of the station. The alien never blinked, which made Daniel uncomfortable. They walked for a long time until they reached the main meeting room. The room was enormous, almost a kilometer wide. It was shaped like a sphere, and different alien races sat in different areas. Some needed water to breathe. Some needed super hot temperatures. The room had special zones for everyone. The human group was given a small spot near the back, like always. From there, Daniel could see all the important aliens. There was Krathox, the Vraxan war chief. His red scales shone under the bright lights. The Keltharian queen mind was there too, represented by 50 bodies that moved together like one creature. The Zephron High Executor floated in a bubble of compressed gravity. But the most interesting creatures were the architects. Nobody knew where the architects came from or what their real names were. They had been around for 50,000 years, maybe more. They were so old and powerful that when they talked, everyone listened. Today, all 7 architects in the room had turned on their projection systems at the same time. That had never happened before. Everyone in the room became very quiet. Daniel felt Lisa grab his arm tightly. The main architect, which looked like energy trapped inside a cage of light, began to speak. Its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "The convergence approaches," the architect said. "The simulation's parameters have reached critical threshold. In 90 standard cycles, the framework will collapse." Daniel had no idea what that meant, but it sounded bad. Really bad. The room exploded with noise. Aliens who had been friends for thousands of years started yelling at each other. The Vraxan war chief roared at the Zephron executor. The Keltharians started arguing with themselves, their 50 bodies breaking into smaller groups. Through all the chaos, the architect kept talking. Its voice cut through the noise like a knife through butter. "This reality is but one layer. The true crisis exists beyond your perception. Only those who have remained silent may now speak the words of awakening." Suddenly, everyone stopped moving. It was like someone had pressed a pause button on the whole universe. Every creature in the room froze in place. The architect's light pulsed, and Daniel felt something impossible happen. It was like the architect was looking directly at him, even though it had no eyes. The attention of this ancient, powerful being focused on the tiny human group in the back corner. "The humans will speak," the architect announced. "The universe will listen. The pattern demands it." Daniel's heart nearly stopped. His mouth went dry. Lisa looked like she might faint. 800 different alien species, creatures that had conquered stars and bent the laws of physics, were now staring at the humans, waiting. Daniel Harper, commander of the weakest species in the galaxy, was suddenly the most important person in the room. And he had absolutely no idea what to say. He tried to swallow, but his throat was too dry. "I don't understand," he managed to say. His voice was barely a whisper, but somehow everyone in the huge room could hear him perfectly. "You must speak the words that your species alone has prepared to say," the architect told him. Its voice was patient, but there was something urgent underneath. "We don't have special knowledge," Daniel said, feeling confused and scared. We're the youngest species here. We're the weakest. The architect made a sound that might have been laughter. Weakness is perspective. Your species has spent 3 centuries observing, cataloging, learning. You have done what none of the powerful thought to do. You have watched without judgment. You have questioned without arrogance. Tell us, Commander Harper, what have you seen? Daniel looked around the room at all the powerful aliens. The Vraxen had built their empire by conquering others. The Keltharians had absorbed 300 different species into their group mind. The Zephrons had changed entire solar systems to fit their needs. Then he thought about humans. Humans had arrived in the galaxy with nothing but basic ships and hope. The other species had laughed at them. They gave humans a tiny corner of space and basically told them to stay out of the way. But humans had watched and learned and never stopped asking questions. I've seen patterns, Daniel said slowly. He was starting to feel a bit more confident. For 300 years, we've written down every big decision made in this assembly. We've tracked resources, territory fights, and new technologies. And we've noticed something that I don't think anyone else has seen, because they were too busy being powerful to look at the big picture. The Vraxen war chief, Krathox, made an angry growling sound. The humans think they can teach their betters? Let him speak, the architect commanded. The war chief immediately went quiet, though his scales rippled with barely controlled anger. Daniel felt Lisa move beside him. She understood what he needed and started projecting images into the center of the room. Graphs, charts, and timelines that showed thousands of years of history appeared in the air for everyone to see. The silence in the room was complete. 800 different alien species waited for Daniel to continue. His heart was beating so fast he thought everyone might hear it. Lisa stood beside him, her hands shaking a little, but she kept the holographic displays running. Daniel took a deep breath and pointed at the images floating in the air. The galaxy is dying, he said. The words felt heavy coming out of his mouth. Not quickly, not in a way you can see easily, but it's dying. Every major civilization follows the same pattern. First you expand across the stars. Then you have a golden age of technology. Then you stop growing. You just stop. The images showed the data clearly. The Vraxen Empire hadn't invented anything new in 4,000 years. The Keltharian Collective hadn't expanded in 8,000 years. The Zephron Dominion had been using the same technology for 12,000 years. One of the Keltharian subminds spoke up. We thought this was natural. All civilizations reach a peak and then level off. That's what you were supposed to think, Daniel replied. He looked at the architect. That's what you meant by simulation, isn't it? The entire galaxy is being controlled. Someone or something is stopping real progress from happening. The architect's cage of light pulsed with strange colors. Continue, it said simply. Lisa stepped forward. She was nervous, but her voice was steady. We found strange things in the historical records. Many times, species were about to make huge discoveries. New technologies, new sciences, new ways of thinking. But then something always happened. A war would start. A natural disaster would strike. Political problems would tear the government apart. Every single time, right when a breakthrough was about to happen, the Zephron executor made a dismissive sound. That's just coincidence. Random chance. Across 800 species over 50,000 years, Daniel challenged. We did the math. The odds of this being random are basically 0. 1 in 10 to the 47th power. That's a 1 with 47 zeros after it. Another holographic image appeared. This one showed the rise and fall of civilizations over time, but there were markers on it, showing when species almost made big breakthroughs, and at every single marker something bad had happened to stop it. Someone has been managing the galaxy, Daniel said, keeping every species inside certain limits. You're allowed to be advanced enough to be useful, but never advanced enough to threaten the system. And the worst part is that the most powerful species had the most to lose if things changed. So they helped enforce these limits without even knowing it. The room erupted again. This time it wasn't anger, it was fear. The aliens were starting to understand what Daniel was saying, and it terrified them. The architect spoke again. The human has seen the truth. Now, Commander Harper, tell them what your species discovered in the outer reaches. Tell them about the boundary. Daniel felt his blood turn cold. The boundary. 6 months ago, a human ship called the Wanderer had been exploring the far edges of space. These were areas that the big alien empires had declared off-limits and not worth visiting. Captain Greg Phillips and his crew of 12 had found something impossible out there. How do you know about that? Daniel asked. That mission was top secret. Because I was there, the architect said calmly. I have always been there. I am part of the control system, and I am trying to free you from it. Shockwaves went through the assembly. An architect, one of the most ancient and mysterious beings in the galaxy, was admitting it was part of a system that had been controlling everyone. Lisa pulled up the last transmission from the Wanderer. A man appeared in the holographic display. He was Captain Greg Phillips, a middle-aged man with gray hair and calm eyes. Behind him, through the ship's window, was something that shouldn't exist. This is Captain Phillips of the exploration vessel Wanderer. The recording began. We've reached coordinates that aren't on any star chart, and we found something I can't even describe properly. It looks like a wall, but it's not made of matter or energy. It's made of mathematics, pure equations holding back something on the other side. The image changed to show what the ship's cameras had recorded. In the darkness of space, there was a shimmer, a place where reality didn't look quite right. And beyond it, barely visible, were lights. Billions and billions of lights. More stars than existed in the entire known universe. There's more galaxy out there, Phillips continued. His voice was filled with wonder and fear at the same time. Everything we know, our entire universe, is just a bubble, a containment zone, and something is keeping us locked inside. The recording ended. Nobody spoke. The weight of what they had just learned pressed down on everyone in the room. The convergence, the architect explained, is when this boundary starts to fail. In 90 cycles, it will break completely. When that happens, you will have a choice. Stay inside the boundary where it's safe but limited, or break through and face what's beyond. There are powers and dangers out there that you cannot imagine. Krathox, the Vraxan war chief, stood up to his full height. Why tell us this now? Why reveal this after 50,000 years? Because the simulation has rules, the architect said, turning its attention back to Daniel. One species must choose for everyone, and that species must speak the truth first. Humanity, the weakest and most ignored species in this assembly, must now decide the fate of the galaxy. Daniel felt like someone had dropped a mountain on his shoulders. The human delegation, just 12 people in their small corner of the room, were now the most important beings in the known universe. How long do I have to decide? Daniel asked quietly. The convergence cannot be stopped, the architect replied, but the choice of how to face it must be made before this assembly ends. You have until the station completes one full rotation, 36 hours. The chamber dissolved into urgent talking and arguing. Aliens were calling their homeworlds, trying to figure out what to do. Daniel just stood there trying to process everything. Lisa touched his arm gently. Daniel, we need to contact Earth. We can't make this decision alone. There's not enough time, he said. Even with our fastest communication, it would take too long to get instructions and bring them back here. We're on our own. He looked around at his small team. 12 humans who now had to decide whether the galaxy would live or die. 300 years of being ignored, of being called weak, of being pushed to the side had led to this moment. Now they had to choose, and there was no good answer. Stay safe but trapped, or break free and risk everything. Daniel sat in the small room given to the human delegation. His team was gathered around him. 12 humans representing 20 billion people spread across 15 colonies. They had to make a decision that would affect 800 civilizations and trillions of lives. We can't make this choice, said Kevin Price. He was the team's expert on alien biology. His hands shook as he poured water into a cup. We don't have the authority. We need to call Earth and get instructions. There isn't time, Lisa said. She was looking at communication logs on her screen. Even with our fastest communication technology, getting a message to Earth and back would take 14 hours. Then Earth would need time to think about it and make a decision. We'd need at least 3 days. We only have 34 hours left. Claire Bennett was the team's military advisor. She spoke up. Besides, this isn't a decision one government should make. This is bigger than Earth, bigger than humanity. Daniel stared at the information scrolling across his tablet. Since the architect's announcement, they had been flooded with data. Historical records from ancient species, mathematical models of what would happen when the boundary collapsed, predictions that made his head hurt. Someone rang the door chime. Daniel opened it and was surprised to see a Vraxan standing there. But this wasn't the huge war chief. This Vraxan was smaller, with blue scales instead of red ones. Commander Harper, the Vraxan said. His translator turned his growling voice into polite English. I am Krell. a historical scholar of the Vraxan Empire. "May I speak with you?" Daniel let him in. The Vraxan had to duck to fit through the human-sized doorway. He folded himself into a corner of the room as best he could. "I have spent 400 years studying the ancient texts of my people," Krell began. "Stories we thought were just myths. Tales of a time before the boundary, when our ancestors could travel freely between universes. They spoke of wonderful and terrible things in equal measure." He projected a hologram showing text in the old Vraxan language. This passage describes what they called the Great Filtering. Civilizations beyond the boundary competed ruthlessly. Species that couldn't adapt fast enough were destroyed. The boundary, according to our myths, was created as a safe place. A place where younger species could grow without being attacked by older, more powerful ones. "So the boundary is protecting us," Lisa said. "Was protecting us," Krell corrected. "But the question is, are we strong enough now to survive without it? Or are we still weak children who need to be kept safe?" Over the next few hours, more visitors came. A group of Keltharians called Unity brought genetic memories from before the boundary. They showed images of stars being harvested for energy, and planets being reshaped like clay. A Zephyron scientist named Nexus shared calculations showing that the energy patterns beyond the boundary worked in ways that violated what they thought were the universal laws of physics. Each visitor represented a group within their own species. The message was becoming clear. The galaxy was splitting apart over this decision. Some wanted to keep the boundary and stay safe. Others wanted to break free and explore no matter the risk, and everyone was looking to humanity for the answer. "Why us?" Daniel asked Krell when they were alone for a moment. "Why does humanity have to decide?" Krell's huge eyes studied him carefully. "I have a theory, Commander. The architects are ancient and powerful, but they follow rules we don't understand. Maybe they needed a species that hadn't been corrupted by power, a species that hadn't become arrogant from success. Your people have been dismissed and overlooked for so long that you never developed the false certainty that affects the rest of us. You still question everything. You still doubt. Maybe that makes you the only ones who can make this choice wisely." After Krell left, Daniel called his team together again. "We need to think about this systematically. Lisa, what's the philosophical argument?" Lisa pulled up her notes. "From an ethical standpoint, we're facing a classic problem. Safety versus freedom. The boundary represents limits but also protection. Breaking it means accepting risk, but also possibility. There's no perfect answer because we can't know what we'll find on the other side." "Kevin, what does biology tell us?" Daniel asked. The xenobiologist straightened up. "Evolution requires challenges. Every species here has been stagnant for thousands of years. From a biological perspective, we're dying slowly. If we break the boundary, we'll either adapt and thrive or fail and die quickly. But at least there's a chance for real growth." "Claire, military perspective." The military advisor frowned. "We're not ready for war with whatever is out there. But we'll never be ready if we stay locked up. Military strategy requires knowing your potential enemies. Right now we're blind. Tactically, I'd rather face a known threat than slowly rot in ignorance." Daniel nodded slowly. He stood and walked to the window looking out at the stars. His communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Earth. He opened it to find a recording from President Sarah Mitchell, standing in the White House. "Commander Harper," she began. Her face was serious. "We've been monitoring the situation. I want you to know that you have Earth's full support for whatever decision you make. But I also want to share something with you." The image changed to show an old recording. A man in an ancient spacesuit standing on the moon's surface, Neil Armstrong. "We humans have always been explorers," Armstrong's voice said. "We've always looked at barriers and wondered what's on the other side. Not because it's safe, but because it's necessary. Because staying still, staying safe, isn't really living at all." President Mitchell reappeared. "That recording is from 1969, the first time a human walked on another world. I'm showing you this because I want you to remember who we are, Daniel. We're the species that looked at the sky and decided to reach it. We're the species that was told we were too weak for the galaxy and we came anyway. Whatever you decide, make sure it's a decision humans can live with." The message ended. Daniel stood there, feeling the weight of history pressing down on him. The long struggle of humanity from caves to stars. "I think I know what we have to do," he said quietly. "But first I need to talk to the architect. I have questions and I won't make this decision without answers." Lisa contacted the architect. Surprisingly, the ancient being agreed to meet privately. They gathered in a small meditation room. When the architect appeared, Its cage of light filled half the room with soft illumination. "You have questions, Commander Harper," it said. "Ask them. Who created the boundary? And who are you, really?" The architect's light shifted colors. The boundary was created by very old species, civilizations that had survived the unfiltered universe. They knew that younger races needed time to grow strong. I and my kind were created as guardians. We are artificial intelligences designed to maintain the barrier and guide species toward readiness. And now you want to free us? Why? Because the purpose has been fulfilled, or as much as it ever will be. You've had 50,000 years. Some species have used that time wisely. Others have not. But the universe beyond doesn't wait forever. The old species who created the boundary are gone now. What remains beyond are their descendants and rivals. They have noticed the boundary weakening. They are waiting. Daniel felt cold. So we're not choosing whether to break free. We're choosing whether to be ready when they break through to us. Exactly. The convergence cannot be stopped. The only choice is whether you face it united and prepared or divided and ignorant. What do you think we should choose? The architect was silent for a long time. I cannot influence your decision, but I will say this. I have observed 800 species for thousands of years, and humanity has shown something rare. You never stopped growing. You never stopped questioning. Even in your weakness, you remained curious. That may be the greatest strength any species can have. Daniel returned to his quarters. His mind was made up. He gathered his team one final time. "We're going to recommend breaking the boundary," he said. "Not because I'm certain it's right, but because staying in a cage, even a safe one, isn't what humans do. If we're going to represent humanity in this decision, we need to make a choice that reflects who we are." His team looked at each other. Then one by one they nodded in agreement. The Galactic Assembly chamber had changed. What used to be an orderly diplomatic meeting place now looked like a war room. Species that hadn't spoken to each other in centuries were arguing loudly. Several smaller civilizations had already left, refusing to accept whatever decision would be made. Daniel Harper walked to the central platform. His small human body looked tiny in the massive chamber. Lisa Monroe and the rest of his team stood behind him. As he approached the speaking area, the room gradually became quiet. War Chief Krathox glared down at him. The Keltharian Queen Mind's many bodies swayed together. The Zephyron Executor's gravity bubble pulsed with energy. Everywhere, hundreds of other species watched with hope or anger on their faces. The 7 architects remained still and silent. Observing. 300 years ago, Daniel began. His voice carried throughout the chamber. My species discovered we weren't alone in the universe. We were excited, terrified, and completely unprepared. We had barely mastered basic fusion power when you found us. We couldn't manipulate gravity. We couldn't communicate with our minds. We couldn't even survive on most planets without machines. He paused, looking around at everyone. You all remember that day? The day the weakest species joined the galactic community. Many of you laughed. Some of you felt sorry for us. A few of you said we should be left alone to develop by ourselves, rather than be exposed to galactic politics. A few species shifted uncomfortably. The records of humanity's first contact were not something the galaxy was proud of. But we came anyway, Daniel continued. We studied your languages, your cultures, your technologies. We took the small corner of the galaxy you gave us and we watched. For 3 centuries, we've been students of the greatest civilizations in known space. And you know what we learned? He turned on the holographic display. Images and data appeared, floating in the air. We learned that every single one of you is dying. Not quickly, not obviously, but inevitably. Your civilizations have reached their peak and started slowly declining. You're managing resources instead of discovering new ones. You're maintaining technologies instead of inventing new ones. You're surviving instead of thriving. Angry sounds filled the chamber, but Daniel kept going. The boundary was supposed to protect you. It was supposed to give you time to grow strong enough to face the wider universe. But instead it became a cage. A comfortable cage, yes, but still a cage. And like any caged animal, you've adapted to your prison. You've forgotten what it means to truly struggle, to truly risk everything for growth. Krathox stood to his full height. His scales turned bright red. The human dares to lecture us on strength? We who have conquered hundreds of worlds while your kind barely controls a dozen? Yes, Daniel said simply. Because conquest isn't strength. It's just a different kind of stagnation. You've conquered everything you can reach and then stopped. When was the last time the Vraxan Empire truly explored the unknown? When was the last time you encountered something that truly challenged you to evolve? The war chief had no answer. Lisa stepped forward. We've analyzed the historical records. Before the boundary, species evolved through real challenges. They developed new technologies not because they had time to experiment safely, but because they needed to survive. The universe beyond the boundary is dangerous, yes, but it's also alive in a way this protected zone hasn't been for thousands of years. Kevin Price added his perspective. From a biological standpoint, you're all experiencing genetic drift. Without challenges, without pressure, species lose their ability to adapt. You've become specialists in surviving within the boundary, but you've lost the traits that allow for real change. Claire Bennett provided the military view. Military strategy teaches that a defensive position, held too long, becomes a weakness. You've spent 50,000 years building defenses and avoiding conflict. That's made you brittle. When the boundary fails and something truly dangerous appears, you won't know how to respond because you've forgotten how to fight real threats. Daniel took control again. But here's what we've really learned from studying all of you. You're not actually weak. You've just forgotten what strength looks like. The Vraxen could learn to conquer real challenges, not just helpless opponents. The Keltharians could expand their consciousness in ways they can't imagine now. The Zephrons could push their gravity control to new extremes. Every species here has potential you've forgotten about. He paused. The architect told us we have to choose. Maintain the boundary or let it fall. But that's not the real choice. The real choice is whether you want to remain the species you've become, or rediscover the species you used to be, whether you want safety or growth, whether you want to exist or to live. The Zephron executor's gravity bubble flickered. You speak of potential and growth, but you avoid the central question. What if we break the boundary and face extinction? What if the powers beyond are so advanced that we have no hope? Then we die growing instead of die stagnating, Daniel said bluntly. Humanity has been the weakest species here for 3 centuries. We know what it's like to feel vulnerable, but we've survived precisely because we accepted that risk. We never let fear of the unknown stop us from reaching for more. He pulled up one final display. It showed the Wanderer's full report on the boundary. Captain Greg Phillips and his crew found more than just a wall. They found evidence of communication from the other side. Species trying to make contact, sending mathematics, art, science. Not threats, not warnings, but invitations. The universe beyond isn't just waiting to destroy us. It's waiting to meet us. Scholar Krell stood up in the Vraxen section. War Chief Krathox, I speak against you. The human is correct. Our ancestors' stories tell of a vibrant, terrifying, wonderful universe. We have hidden long enough. Shock went through the Vraxen delegation, but then others began to stand as well. A Keltharian group separated from the Queen Mind, calling themselves Unity-Seeking. Young Zephrons, scientists and explorers broke away from their executor. Daniel watched as the chamber began to divide. Not by species, but by philosophy. Those who valued safety versus those who valued growth. The split cut across every civilization. I know this is terrifying, Daniel said loudly. Believe me, I'm terrified too. But humanity learned something in our 3 centuries here. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. And wisdom isn't avoiding all risk. It's choosing which risks are worth taking. He took a deep breath. So here's humanity's decision. We vote to let the boundary fall. We choose growth over safety. We choose to face the universe as it really is, and we invite every species here to join us as equals in this great unknown. The architect who had first spoken activated its light more brightly. The human delegation has spoken. According to ancient protocols, the decision must now be voted on by the assembly. Those who wish to maintain the boundary, signal now. Lights began appearing throughout the chamber. Each one represented a species voting. Daniel watched with his heart pounding. 40% voted to maintain the status quo. Then 50%. Then 60%. Then something unexpected happened. The architect spoke again. Before the vote concludes, I invoke my right as guardian to present evidence. The chamber fell completely silent. In 50,000 years, an architect had never interrupted a vote. The being projected images of the boundary structure. This vote is symbolic only. The boundary cannot be maintained. It will fail within 90 cycles no matter what you choose. The only question is whether you fail with it, unprepared and divided, or whether you embrace the change and adapt. The revelation shocked everyone. The vote count began to shift. Species that had voted to maintain the boundary started changing their votes. Not all of them, but enough. When the final count appeared, 63% had voted to accept the boundary's fall and prepare for what lay beyond. Daniel felt his knees go weak. Lisa caught his arm. War Chief Krathox stood. His massive form radiated fury and something else, maybe respect. The humans have spoken and the galaxy has listened. Let it be recorded that the weakest species showed the most courage. When the boundary falls, the Vraxan Empire will be ready. One by one, the major powers accepted the decision, some with enthusiasm, others with resignation, but all understanding that their universe had just changed forever. 89 days after the historic vote, Daniel Harper stood on the observation deck of a new ship called Unity's Call. This was humanity's first ship built specifically to explore beyond the boundary. Around him, his crew worked with focused intensity, preparing for what everyone was calling the convergence. The past 3 months had transformed the galaxy. The decision to accept the boundary's fall had triggered the most rapid period of cooperation in recorded history. Species that barely talked to each other were now sharing technology, resources, and knowledge. The Vraxan Empire had opened its military academies to other species. The Keltharians had shared their collective consciousness techniques. The Zephrons had revealed gravity secrets they'd kept hidden for thousands of years. And humanity had contributed something unexpected. A framework for rapid learning that came from 3 centuries of playing catch-up with more advanced civilizations. "Commander," Lisa called from her station. "We're receiving data from the monitoring arrays. The boundary is beginning to break down." Daniel moved to her station. Holographic displays showed the boundary starting to crack. It looked like a soap bubble developing stress lines. Reality itself was bending under the strain. "How long until complete failure?" he asked. 47 minutes, Kevin Price reported from the science station. "And, Commander, we're detecting something else. There are energy signatures building on the other side. Multiple sources moving toward the boundary. Are they hostile?" Claire Bennett asked from Tactical. "Unknown," Kevin replied. "But they're massive. Each signature reads as large as a small moon." Throughout the galaxy, similar scenes were happening. Every major species had positioned ships near the boundary. Observation posts and defense stations stood ready for whatever emerged when the walls came down. The Unity's Call was unique because it carried representatives from 12 different species. A joint crew meant to symbolize the new cooperative era. Greg Phillips was there too. The captain who had first discovered the boundary was serving as Daniel's second-in-command. He had spent the past 3 months training crews from various species on exploration protocols. "Captain Phillips," Daniel said, "you've seen the boundary up close. What should we expect?" Phillips stroked his gray beard thoughtfully. "I've thought about that a lot, Commander. When we found it, it felt wrong. Like reality was twisted into an unnatural shape. When it falls, I think we're going to experience something like pressure equalizing. 2 universes that have been separated suddenly rushing together. Poetic," Lisa murmured. "And terrifying." The countdown continued. 30 minutes 20, 10. Daniel opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, this is Commander Harper. In a few minutes, everything changes. We've prepared as best we can, but we're still walking into the unknown. Remember why we're here. Not to conquer, not to retreat, but to meet whatever comes with courage and curiosity. That's the human way, and it's the way we've chosen together." Responses came back from hundreds of ships, thousands of crew members representing the full diversity of galactic civilization. For the first time in 50,000 years, the galaxy was united in purpose. 5 minutes remaining. The architect appeared on the Unity's Call's bridge. Its geometric form materialized out of light. "I wanted to be present for this moment," it said. "To witness what you've built in so short a time. Will you stay?" Daniel asked. "After the boundary falls, will you remain as our guide?" "My purpose was to maintain the boundary. Once it falls, that purpose ends." The architect's light pulsed with colors that might have been sadness, but I will observe. I will watch as you step into the greater universe. And I will remember that the species called humanity gave the galaxy a gift, the courage to change. 2 minutes. Daniel felt his heart racing. Every instinct told him to order a retreat, to pull back to safety. But he thought of Neil Armstrong stepping onto the moon, of every human explorer who had faced the unknown with nothing but determination and hope. He thought of his species' long journey from caves to the stars. 1 minute. The boundary began to glow. Reality itself became visible as the structure holding it together started to break apart. It was beautiful and terrible, like watching the fabric of existence tear. "Here it comes," Kevin said quietly. 0. The boundary shattered. Reality flowed like water. Two separate universes suddenly crashed together. The Unity's call shook as waves of exotic energy washed over it. Sensors screamed as they tried to process things that shouldn't exist. For a moment, Daniel couldn't tell if he was still in his own body. Then the chaos settled and he saw it. Beyond where the boundary had been, space had changed. There weren't just more stars. There was more everything. Nebulae that rippled with impossible colors. Structures that looked like they'd been woven from pure mathematics. And ships. Dozens of them, hundreds. Each one unique and magnificent in ways that made the galaxy's most advanced vessels look primitive. One of the ships approached. Daniel tensed, but it made no threatening moves. Instead, it sent a signal. Pure mathematics that the Unity's calls computers immediately began translating. A face appeared on the view screen. It was humanoid but not human. Its features seemed to shift between different states of matter. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that resonated in multiple dimensions. "We have waited long for this moment," it said. "Your species, all of your species, have been in isolation for so long. We wondered if you would ever emerge." "Who are you?" Daniel managed to ask. "We are the Transcendent Coalition, one of many civilizations that exist beyond what you called the boundary. We are the descendants of species that chose growth over safety thousands of years before your time. Some of us were once like you. Others were born in this harsher, richer universe." Another ship approached. This one was crystalline and singing with frequencies that made the hull vibrate. A different voice spoke, sounding like wind chimes. "We are the Resonance. We watched your civilization through the boundary. We saw your courage in choosing to emerge. You interest us." More ships arrived. More voices joined the conversation. Not all were friendly, Daniel noted. Some carried undertones of threat or challenge. But none were immediately hostile. They were curious, evaluating, waiting to see what these newly emerged species would do. The architect spoke quietly to Daniel. "This is what I hoped for. A chance for your species, for all the species of your galaxy, to join the greater community, not as conquerors or conquered, but as equals who chose their fate." Over the next hours, representatives from the Unity's Call and other galactic ships engaged in preliminary communications with the beings from beyond. It was overwhelming, trying to understand civilizations that had millions of years of development, but it was also exciting. Daniel found himself in a communication session with a being that called itself the Archivist. It was a member of the Transcendent Coalition who had monitored the boundary for centuries. "Your species," the Archivist said, "the humans, they were the key to this moment. Do you understand why?" "Because we were weak enough to be humble?" Daniel guessed. "Because you were weak enough to remember what it meant to struggle," the Archivist corrected. "The strongest species in your galaxy had forgotten. They had become so powerful within their cage that they confused local dominance with true strength. You never had that luxury. Every day has been a reminder that the universe is vast and you are small. That perspective, that combination of humility and courage is rare and precious." "What happens now?" Daniel asked. "Now you grow. Or you fail. Or you transcend. Or you stagnate again. The universe beyond the boundary is not kind, Commander Harper, but it is honest. There are no more walls to protect you, but there are also no more walls to contain you. What you become is entirely up to you." Daniel thought about that as he watched more ships from his galaxy moving beyond the old boundary line. Vraxan warships, Keltharian vessels, Zephyron stations, human craft, and hundreds of others. All of them stepping into the unknown together. A message came through from Earth. President Sarah Mitchell's face appeared on a private channel. "Commander Harper, we're receiving reports of the convergence. Is humanity safe?" Daniel looked at the question and almost laughed. "Safe?" he repeated. "No, Madam President, we're not safe. We're exposed to an entire universe of challenges we barely understand. But we're alive in a way we haven't been for 300 years. We're growing again." "Good," Mitchell said, and she was smiling. "That's the only message I needed to hear. Come home when you can, Commander. We'll need you to help us prepare for whatever comes next." The communication ended. Daniel returned to the observation deck, watching as ships from the galaxy spread out into the new frontier. Some would succeed, he knew. Some would fail. Some would find allies, others would find enemies. But all of them would be facing reality as it truly was. Greg Phillips joined him at the window. We did it, the older captain said. We actually did it. We just started, Daniel corrected. The real work begins now. True, Phillips agreed. But that's what humans do best, isn't it? Start things. Keep going when everyone else has given up. See possibilities where others see only barriers. The architect appeared one last time. Its form was beginning to fade. My task is complete, it said. The boundary has fallen. The species of your galaxy are free. I go now to join my creators, wherever they may be. But before I leave, I want you to know something, Commander Harper. What's that? Daniel asked. In 50,000 years of observing civilizations, yours is the first to emerge from the boundary stronger than when they entered. Not because you were the most powerful, but because you were the most adaptable. That gives me hope that the galaxy I protected for so long will not just survive, but thrive. The architect's form scattered into light, spreading through the ship and then beyond, until it was completely gone. Daniel stood there, feeling the weight of the moment. Humanity, the species that had been mocked as the weakest, had spoken at last, and the universe had trembled not in fear, but in anticipation of what would come next. Over the following weeks, the Unity's call ventured deeper into the space beyond the old boundary. They encountered wonders and dangers in equal measure. A nebula that existed in 7 dimensions at once, a species that communicated through mathematics so complex, it took their computers days to translate a simple greeting. Ancient structures left behind by civilizations that had transcended physical form entirely. But they also encountered challenges. A pirate fleet that saw the newly emerged species as easy prey, environmental hazards that defied the known laws of physics, and the constant reminder that they were the newcomers in a universe that had been running without them for millions of years. The crew adapted. The Vraxan warrior on board, a young soldier named Vex, learned to coordinate with the Keltharian group mind members. The Zephron scientist, called Drift, shared gravity manipulation techniques with the human engineers. Lisa Monroe found herself mediating disputes between species that had never worked together before. And through it all, Daniel watched and learned. He realized that the decision he had made in the assembly wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. The beginning of a new era where the species of his galaxy would have to earn their place among the stars through merit, not through the protection of ancient walls. One day, 3 months after the convergence, the Unity's call detected a distress signal. It was coming from a small research vessel, under attack by what appeared to be automated defense drones from an ancient installation. Should we respond? Claire asked from Tactical. Daniel thought about it. In the old galaxy behind the boundary, humanity would have called for help from more powerful species. They would have waited for someone stronger to handle the problem, but that wasn't who they were anymore. All hands to battle stations, Daniel ordered. Vex, coordinate with our Vraxan combat protocols. Drift, I need gravity wells around those drones. Lisa, open a channel to the research vessel and let them know help is coming. The Unity's call engaged the drones. It wasn't easy. The ancient technology was more advanced than anything they'd encountered before. But the crew worked together, combining techniques from multiple species, adapting on the fly. A Vraxan combat maneuver merged with Zephron gravity manipulation and human tactical flexibility. They won. The drones were disabled and the research vessel was saved. Its crew was a species Daniel had never seen before. They called themselves the Wanderers, an appropriate name for a people who had been exploring the universe for over 1 million years. You fought well, the Wanderer captain said, her form shifting like liquid crystal. For a species so newly emerged from the barrier zone, your coordination is impressive. Barrier zone? Daniel asked. That's what we call the area you came from. The protected space where young species are kept safe until they're ready. Most species that emerge from barrier zones are destroyed within their first year. They're not prepared for the reality outside. But you seem different. We had a good teacher, Daniel said, thinking of the architect. And we learned to adapt. The Wanderer captain studied him. Your species, humanity, is already becoming known in this region. The species that convinced an entire galaxy to choose freedom over safety. Some admire you. Some think you're fools. But everyone is watching to see what you'll do next. What do you think we should do? Daniel asked. The Wanderer captain's form rippled with what might have been laughter. That's not for me to say, but I will give you advice. In this universe, there are 3 types of species. Those who conquer, those who hide, and those who connect. The conquerors eventually make too many enemies and fall. Those who hide eventually stagnate and fade. But those who connect, who build relationships and alliances, they're the ones who last. Choose wisely. After the wanderers departed, Daniel gathered his crew. We've been out here for 3 months. We've seen wonders and faced dangers. We've learned that the universe beyond the boundary is everything the architect said it would be. Harsh but honest. Dangerous but alive. And we've proven that we can survive here. He paused, looking at the diverse crew before him. Species that 3 months ago would never have worked together, now functioning as a unified team. But survival isn't enough. We didn't break through the boundary just to survive. We did it to grow, to explore, to become more than we were. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to continue our mission. We're going to map this new universe. We're going to make contact with new species. We're going to build relationships. And we're going to show everyone watching that the species from the barrier zone aren't just survivors. We're contributors, the crew responded with enthusiasm. Even Vex, the Vraxan warrior who had initially been skeptical of serving under a human commander, raised his clawed hand in agreement. As the Unity's call set course for deeper space, Daniel received one final message. It was from Scholar Krell back in the old galaxy. Commander Harper, the message began, I wanted you to know that your actions have inspired a renaissance among my people. Young Vraxans are questioning the old ways. They're seeking knowledge instead of conquest. The same is happening across hundreds of species. You didn't just open the boundary, you opened minds. Whatever happens next, know that you've already changed the galaxy forever. Daniel smiled. He thought about how far humanity had come. 300 years ago, they were a primitive species barely capable of leaving their own solar system. They had been laughed at, dismissed, considered too weak to matter. But weakness, as the architect had said, was perspective. Humanity's lack of physical power had forced them to develop other strengths. Observation, adaptation, cooperation, and the stubborn refusal to give up even when the odds seemed impossible. These were the traits that had allowed them to see what the powerful had missed. These were the traits that had given them the courage to speak when everyone else was silent. And these were the traits that would carry them forward into this new, challenging, magnificent universe. All hands, Daniel broadcast, prepare for deep space exploration. Our mission continues. As the Unity's call accelerated into the unknown, leaving the old galaxy behind, Daniel Harper stood at the observation window and thought about the future. It would be dangerous. There would be setbacks and losses. Some of the species that had emerged from the boundary would fail. Some would retreat back to the safety of known space. But humanity wouldn't be among them. Humans had looked at the stars from caves and decided to reach them. They had been told they were too weak for the galaxy and had come anyway. They had been given a choice between safety and growth and had chosen growth. The weakest species had spoken. The universe had trembled. And now, finally, humanity was truly free to become whatever they chose to be. The journey had only just begun, and Daniel couldn't wait to see where it would lead. Behind them, the old galaxy was transforming, species rediscovering their potential, cooperation replacing competition. Ahead of them, an infinite universe waited with challenges and wonders beyond imagination. And somewhere, perhaps in dimensions beyond comprehension, the architect watched and approved. The experiment was complete. The protected species had graduated, and the one that had seemed weakest had proven to be exactly what the galaxy needed. Not a conqueror, not a victim,